Hello, and welcome to Why You Should Read a Scientific Paper Every Day, a Transcend Professional Development Corps short video from its short video series. So, like a good scientific paper, I will give you an abstract of what this talk will cover. I'll give you an introduction of why you should read a paper, methods of how to actually read a scientific paper every day, results, so showing some of the highlights of the papers I've read the last year, and then a discussion where I provide some prompts to get you going. So, why should you read a scientific paper every day? I think it's useful, but it's not my own idea. I actually came across this several years ago about a scientist who did just that, Olivia Risland. I think this is a science uh, journal article about how she actually did this for 899 days. So, and she says that, yeah, it made her a better scientist. So I saw this concept. I thought, oh, I should try doing that myself. Now, as a bit of a caveat, I when I say scientific paper every day, I would say every work day. Certainly, you could do it every single day, but it's good to have weekends and off and to take a break from science. So I would say sort of a soft every day is every work day, Monday through Friday. And of course, you don't have to do this perfectly, but in getting into the habit of reading a scientific paper every day, I think is really a great habit to get into. So, some of the reasons why I think you should do this. Certainly, you can read the article for yourself, but these are sort of my reasons that I've come up with as I've gone through it. First of all, scientific. Certainly, that's a great way to learn new ideas, learn new approaches, techniques, and breakthroughs. On the creative side of things, it's a great way to get involved in new research ideas and be able to help think outside your own little box, especially if you read widely, not just in your field, but read any interesting journal article, scientific journal article that sort of catches your eye. To be able to sort of smash together new ideas, different ideas. And then finally, philosophical, sort of, I think a breadth of knowledge, being well versed in a variety of science, is a ner it's its own virtue that um, you don't necessarily need to like get something immediately, tangibly sort of productive out of it. It can be just good for its own sake. So, with those three reasons under our belt, let's turn to some methods for actually finding journal articles to read. There's all sorts of ways you can go about it. And first of all, you could pick a journal. You could have a targeted journal that you look at and read through on a regular basis. For a good starting point would be something like PLOS One has a family of journals, so you can look at all different sorts of fields, and they're open access, so that you couldn't do worse than starting there. Of course, you could have a personal choice. Perhaps you have a journal or a field you really want to look at. You can pick one yourself. So that's that first method. Second method is actually if you want to sort of look at things that are upcoming, maybe aren't quite polished or haven't hit the big scene yet, sort of get a jump on things, you could look at preprint servers. For more like the physics side of things, you could do arXiv. That's a classic one. For biological science, you could go bioRxiv. And even chemistry has now ChemArchive. So you have to do a little more digging, but you could definitely find some uncut gems there. Third one, this is probably the easiest. This is one I do a lot, is look at a aggregate site. So a good one that has a lot is Science Daily. Has a lot of articles across various platforms that's updated daily. Though I found that some of it's, and they have summaries and links to the article, though I did find that some of the titles are getting more and more clickbaity, which, for lack of a better, that's not bad, but sometimes it makes me a little less interested because the science isn't coming first, but it's still good. Another one that's similar is Eureka Alert, which is a little more sort of straight laced, a little bit less um, clickbaity, but there is a lot of overlap of the articles that covered here, so you won't do bad by choosing either of them. And then fourth, maybe for the more online people, you could certainly look at YouTube. There's different YouTubers who will look at scientific articles. So if something catches your eye, you can go and read the paper from there. There's certainly lots. A couple that I found that I kind of like and have been going back to more is Anton Petrov. Seven Days of Science, and Sabine Hassenfelder, if you like. More Anton is more broad scope. 7 Days of Science airs more towards the biological, paleontological side, and Sabine is more physics, especially critiquing physics or critiquing science itself. So you can kind of take these as jumping out points or find your own. So with that, let's take a brief jump into actually what these look like in the wild. So start with +1, the example, has a bunch of journals. You can browse. You can look at all subject areas, picking out things that might be interesting, like microRNAs, spatial effects of zoning factors, or you, of course, could search for specific, terms, specific ideas. If you have your own journal, like for example, if you're into stats, you could look at the Journal of Statistical Software and look at the different publications and say, maybe you want to look at data subsets with vtree. Maybe that'd be interesting. You could take a look at that. For the preprint side of things, there's arXiv in the fields of physics, mathematics, computer science, quantitative biology, etc. So you can search. I think there's ways to look at the most recent one as well, if you want to browse. bioRxiv is the preprint server for biology, and there's different subject areas, and you can actually even view by month, so you can see some of the newest stuff. chemarXiv, I'm less familiar with, but certainly available here and supported by the different chemical societies. Science Daily, one of the first aggregate sites. You can look at different subsets, but you can also just look at the latest news. And kind of go from there. Eureka Alert, again, you can look at the top news or the different news releases, etc. Good place to find the newest research. And going on to the video stuff, so there's Anton, he explains science, math, or other topics, so looking at different science news. 7 Days of Science, again, a little bit more on the sort of paleontology side of things, which I think is perfectly fine. Very exciting, more like the biology, but I think they do some other stuff as well. And then Sabine, more on the side of physics and sort of critiquing modern science, the failures of modern science. She's also German, so you feel like that German bluntness and pessimism. It's a great place to go. She has really good insight in a lot of science. All right. Back to our regularly programmed slides. Here are some results of papers that I've read in the last year that have been fascinating and really stuck with me, to give you a taste of what maybe you'll find. So these are my top 6, my highlights of 2025. Let's go through each of them. There's this, and some of these are older. These aren't all brand new. There's this article or paper I read called Ideas Getting Harder to Find by Bloom et al. And actually looked at how, this graph I cannot unsee, that how total sort of factor productivity in sort of science and research effect has either gone down or stayed flat for the last essentially 100 years, while the number of researchers has exploded, that we're essentially not getting any more research for the number of researchers. That's sort of crazy. Second one, this is actually a preprint on Protexides, finding that it was actually a extinct lineage of multicellular terrestrial eukaryotes. So Protexides, there's one of the first large land organisms that sort of often depicted as towers. A lot of initial research said they were fungus, but they actually, the authors here did a lot of research and found that actually Protexides was not fungus, not plant, not any of these known multicellular eukaryotes. It was actually something else, which is a fascinating find. This next one here, I think this was also a preprint, searching for small primordial black holes in planets, asteroids, and here on Earth. The idea that a small primordial black hole could be at the center of an asteroid and sort of be accreting matter out, or even that you could find them on Earth of small black holes passing by as they kind of shoot by and make like these tiny little holes, and so you can look at really old rocks and try to find these strange holes. Um, Kind of bit out there, but fascinating. The next one here, this is again an older article. This was the upper boundary of the biosphere. This is actually, you can tell how old it is because it was published in like the 70s when the USSR was still a thing. They actually took rockets and shot the rockets up into the mesosphere. So there's, the what is it, the troposphere, the stratosphere, and then the mesosphere. And they actually were able to find biological samples of like fungal spores. I think bacteria spores actually would grow after that. So fascinating stuff. I was doing some research on bioaerosols. Next one here. Again, older one by Cohen. Look at the linear no threshold theory of radiation with inhaled radon decay projects. And actually, what he found was that so it's often stated that radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer, but we actually found looking at lung cancer mortality, and this is he did for men and women, but this is just women. Even correcting for smoking, as radon levels go up, or mean radon levels go up, actual mortality goes down. It's sort of a graph that I can't unsee, and so I have to kind of rethink what I know about radon and cancer. And finally, just sort of an interesting newer article about ribosomes, mRNA, and how they sort of ribosomes can cooperate while translation occurs. All right, with that, let's have a discussion. So hopefully I've shown that reading a scientific paper is important, interesting. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You find a lot of interesting things, as I sort of shown with mine, but now let's get you out there and doing it yourself. So a couple ways you could do that is you could, if you don't already have a source, you want to find a journal that maybe you could start with. You can use Scimago Journal Ranker and just look at some top-rated journals in your field. That may be a great place to start. Or if you just want, you're a little bit tech savvy, you know how to hack together some Python code. I actually created some Python code, some functional but pretty basic code called Random Scientific Paper, which actually goes to Science Daily and randomly pulls up one of the articles for you to read. So if you just want to say, I just want a random paper, I don't want to have to search through things, I just give me a paper. And so that can actually do that. And so you can, and there should be links to all these things in the description of this video, but I just want to show you what this looks like here. So this is sort of Scimago. You can, look at journal rankings, and you can, look at different categories. If you want to look at, archaeology, whatever, it'll give you the top rated ones. And then if you again want that Python code, you can go to my GitHub. I have that available, and it'll just pull out a random article from Science Daily. Of course, you could make this better. You're going to need to, modify slightly to fit your local installation, but that's pretty much there. All right, with that, again, a good scientific paper will have references, sort of the references of all things I mentioned, and they should be in the description of the video as well, from those initial articles to the compilation sites, to the YouTube channels, and links to all those papers that I looked at this year, and then my personal GitHub if you want that Python code. With that, thanks for joining me. Hopefully tomorrow or even today, you start your journey on reading a scientific paper every day.